Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My name is Leon Jones, and this evening I'm doing another pre-recorded video. If you check my community tab out, I always let you know when I'm going to live stream and when I'm going to do pre-recorded videos. Did tell you I was going to do a pre-recorded video since at the moment it's finals. I'm in school. I want to get a good grade on my finals. And once my grades are posted next week, I'll get back to the live streams. Now, for the live streams, I want you all to support the live streams. Cash App is at your own decision. I don't ask for them. Again, it's at your own disclosure there. But support the channel. Like, share, and subscribe to this video. Now, with all that out of the way, let's get to the topic. I'm going to talk about the psychology of propaganda. Now, propaganda comes in many forms. It comes in delusion. Propaganda also comes with fake news, disinformation, misinformation. You hear a lot of your politicians come out with a lot of propaganda. Your feminists are propagandists. Black Power movement. A lot of that is propaganda too. And shout out to Brother Nate. He had Angela Davis on. She talked about she was a devout communist. Well, the funny thing about that video that he presented last night is she and a lot of the other propagandists love to go after the younger people. Why? I mean, think about this. The feminist movement. A lot of that went on during the 60s and 70s. Actually started in the 50s. But those were the periods. But where the feminist movement took place was on college campuses. Why? Because college campuses were havens for young women. That's why a number of professors go to college campuses, because they can indoctrinate children who don't know any better. Well, if you think about it, you have adults who also believe in propaganda, because many of them, they don't challenge anything. They allow news to go by their ear or hear what they want to hear, and they don't care. Now, I'm not going to say that they're all stupid. Some of them are. But a number of them don't take time to research. They don't even challenge the research. And when you're researching information, you have to be careful with who's saying what. I mean, look at Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky. See, propaganda, like I said, comes in different forms. And what I'm teaching you today is how to recognize that propaganda. I mean, preachers, lawyers, politicians. There's some of your avid propagandists, news media. You have a lot of it on social media. But until you challenge it, you're always going to be fooled. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to talk about the propaganda on why it's a con. I'll post a link to this article as soon as I'm finished uploading this video. Now, just going to give you a little insight, and this is from Psychology Today. As you know, I do a lot of my videos on psychology as well. But I'm going to talk about the article as I read along with what's in the article. And I'm going to teach you how to use common sense because this article is based on what I've always said: how to avoid being manipulated by propaganda. Well, the answer is very simple. It's recognizing it. So, again, you can't find the sucker at the pool table, goes the saying, then you're it. So, extrapolating that axiom to the present political moment, we may say, if you don't hear much about propaganda, then that's what you're hearing. Now, what I'm going to say to that is, if you're not questioning what's being said, then what's being said is propaganda. And that propaganda is to convince you to go the way that that person is presenting the information to you and how they're presenting it to you. Again, when I talk about pastors, you look at Raphael Warnock. Many individuals who were black voted for Raphael Warnock. Why? Because he was a pastor. He was a smooth talker. But because individuals couldn't get past the smoothness of his talking, they missed the message. But a lot of what he was saying was propaganda. So when it comes to propaganda, the term has its origins, and it happened in the 17th century. Now, when we put religion in the mix, propaganda's origins were in the 17th century, and it was the efforts of the Catholic Church to propagate its views and stem to the rise of Protestantism. This is when the Protestants, the Lutherans, they all broke away from the Catholic Church. Religion is a lot of propaganda. So Protestantism is another denomination that was basically established by man. Now, when it comes to propaganda, it has gone through various permutations since. Now, by the time Hitler was dead and the Cold War was underway, the world had lost its godly associations and became a pejorative. And that is basically, we're dealing mostly with the self-serving lies of nefarious tyrannical regimes. Now, when something is nefarious, it's wicked. That's what nefarious means. Look it up. When we talk about tyranny, we talk about some of your leaders out there like Mao Zedong, Pol Pot, Hitler. We talk about Mikhail Gorbachev. We talk about a number of these leaders like Mussolini. These were big propagandists, and they were very tyrannical because they killed a lot of people in the process to prove their power. Now, when it comes to propaganda, it's properly understood as a non-discriminating. It's non-discriminating. Propaganda is non-discriminating. Why? It's like a cancer. No matter who you are, cancer is going to spread. Propaganda always spreads. And it's very inclusive to the contents, the users, and the ends. Now, the Webster's Dictionary basically defines propaganda as the spreading of ideas, information, or rumor for the purpose of helping or injuring an institution, a cause, or person. So propaganda, in other words, is a manipulative persuasion in the service of an agenda. The word itself doesn't imply truth or falsehood in the content or pass judgment on the agenda. No, however, when it comes to propaganda, manipulation is also Machiavellian. Now, when I talk about Machiavellian, anything that's Machiavellian is manipulation. So, with that being stated, staying with the topic of propaganda, one must understand that propaganda is not the sole providence of one side or another in a political or any other arena. It is a tool that may be used by both sides. Indeed, assigning the propaganda label to the opposite camp in a conflict is itself common propagandist move. That's what the left and the right do to each other when it comes to politics. Moreover, propaganda may be used to achieve good ends. This does not make it any less problematic, just as assassinating Hitler would not have made assassination as an approach to solving ideological disagreements any less problematic. So, when it comes to propaganda, the propaganda basically traffics mostly in emotions and not just negative ones. So propagandists appeal to our fears, but also to our courage, our hatred, and our love. So the fact that propaganda is at heart an emotional manipulation also does not mean that our emotions and emotionally are bad. It means that our emotional system can be manipulated to destructive ends. Now, that is true also when it comes to propaganda. It also enhances fears. You see the Democratic Party, they put out a lot of fear tactics. They put out a lot of tax the rich, redistribution of wealth. But one thing about the propagandists, they don't want anything to be taken away from them. You see, the propagandists know what their agenda is. Their whole idea is to get you to buy into their agenda. Jim Jones did. And look how many people died, including him, because individuals did not question his rhetoric. Now, again, the antidote to the process of propaganda is to process of is basically the process of finding factual truth. Now, going back to what I just said before, propaganda traffics mostly in emotions and not just negative ones. So basically, propagandists appeal to our fears, but also our courage, hatred, and love. So again, as I stated before, the fact that propaganda is at the heart of emotional manipulation, it does not mean that our emotions and emotionally are bad. It just means that our emotional system can be manipulated to destructive ends. So, again, the antidote to the process of propaganda is the process of finding factual truth. And a lot of people today can't deal with the truth. So they believe in the propaganda. The lies make them feel good. So the best way we have for doing that is through scientific inquiry, which referees competing claims systematically based on evidence. So the propagandist processes or the propagandist process subordinates that facts or it leads facts to an agenda, even at the price of distorting or ignoring facts altogether. Again, the propagandist process subordinates the facts to an agenda, even at the price of distorting or ignoring the facts altogether. So, in other words, they will put the lies or the untruth above the facts. And you see that in politics. So, for science, factual truth is the agenda, it follows the evidence wherever it might lead. Anything counterfactual, anything that obscures or distorts the truth is anathema to the scientific project. So propaganda, again, just like I said, it knows how to sell a product. Science knows how to shop smarts. Again, propaganda knows how to sell a product. Science knows how to shop smart. This tension between propaganda and science speaks to a duality that undergirds our internal architecture. we feel, and we think. The young child is emotional. He or she cries and recoils when he or she is scared or when he or she sees fear in her mother's face. But also, as a scientist, doggedly trying to figure out how stuff works. So both systems are useful for survival, yet the process and results they yield are often in competition with each other. So basically, you have science and you have propaganda, they're butting heads. But really, at the same time, they're opposites of one another because science, if you really look at science and mathematics, they deal with getting to a solution based on facts. Propaganda could have a mix of facts and lies, but when you're a propagandist, you're trying to achieve an agenda, so you don't care about truth at all, even if you know what the truth is. And basically, a good propagandist knows how to get into the emotions of individuals who don't question propaganda. They can make everything sound good, even if it isn't good. Because, see, the propagandists, they will always go for the naive type of people, the gullible type of people, because they're easy to manipulate. Again, when it comes to propaganda, again, both systems are useful for survival, yet the processes and results they yield are often in competition with each other, and the competition is rigged. Emotional reaction precedes reason analysis, like biting must have preceded the evolution of teeth. So we are more likely to act on a feeling without much thought than to act on a thought without much feeling. To quote E.O. Wilson, people would rather believe the now. The propagandist's appeal to emotion is therefore bound to find a more ready reception than the scientist's appeal to reason. Emotional reactions easily drown out and overtake the intellectual analysis and fact based reasoning. That's the psychological edge exploited by the propagandists. While they may seem to be uniquely of this moment, concerns over propaganda undermine American society, and it's not new. Perhaps the most famous case in point dates back to 1937, when the political unrest of the Depression era still gripping the nation, growing concerns about the American public's vulnerability to extremist ideologies prompted the liberal philanthropist Edward Philine to fund a proposal by Clyde Miller of Columbia University to create the Institute of Propaganda Analysis, known as IPA. The IPA defined propaganda as expression of opinion or action by individuals or groups deliberately designed to influence opinions or actions of other individuals or groups with reference to predetermined ends. So the Institute then set out to help the public gain a clear understanding of the present day conditions by teaching Americans how to recognize propaganda, to analyze it, and to appraise it. Again, when we deal with propaganda, it's about the manipulation. So basically, savvy propagandist Miller and his colleagues realized draw their power in a large part from the fact that their targets are not aware that propaganda is being used on them. In this way, propaganda is not a magic flow, but a con. A mind that is not trained to detect and neutralize propaganda is a gullible mind ripe for the swindle. I just mentioned that. This is why your feminists, your Black Power movement, they go and get individuals who are emotionally drawn to an ideology. Like, let's talk about women's rights. Let's talk about the Black Power movement. Even though a number of Blacks today don't even know what the Black Power movement is about. See, the Black Power movement said one thing, but it was basically engulfed in something else. It sounded good. It appealed to the emotions. but nobody questioned it. Why? Because individuals did not know what was going on. Because, of course, when the Black Power movement, the feminist movement, and all these other movements came about, they were just focused on the unfairness. But see, you have to beware of movements. Look at Black Lives Matter. Nobody questioned that movement. Found out Black Lives Matter was only for Black women, Black lesbian women, Black feminist women. It was anti-family, but nobody questioned it. Why? Because it sounded good. And see, that's the thing about propaganda. You can make it sound good, but if you put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. But a propagandist will tell you it's something else. And propagandists are very good at distorting facts. So basically, like I said, propagandists are good to hide facts and they know how to swindle. And the people you swindle are the ones who are very gullible. So moving on. That same year, the Institute published a manifesto, How to Detect Propaganda, detailing the 7 common propaganda devices of which Americans should be aware of. So it's better to counter the nefarious. When I mean nefarious, it means wicked. So the better to counter nefarious propagandists at home and abroad. Here they are. This is one that you're always going to hear. Name calling, labeling. In today's lingo, the basic technique amounts to propaganda 101, and its origins reach all the way back to preschool. So if you want to hurt someone, diminish their standing, intimidate them, or provoke them into ill-considered action, call them a bad name. Crooked, tiny hands, bad names, according to IPA, have ruined reputations, stirred men and women to outstanding accomplishments, sent others to prison cells, and made men mad enough to battle and slaughter their fellow men. Then you have glittering generalities. This technique takes big virtue words to which many people feel emotionally connected, and it attaches them to the ends favored by the propagandists. Make America great, open change. However, these kinds of words mean different things to different people and can be used in different ways. So when somebody talks to us about democracy, we immediately think of our own definite ideas about democracy, the ideas we learn at home, at school, and in church. Our first and natural reaction is to assume that the speaker is using the word in our sense, that he believes as we do on this important subject. This lowers our sales resistance. It makes us less suspicious, makes us far less suspicious than we ought to be when the speaker begins telling us the things the United States must do to preserve democracy. Again, the word democracy, when you hear the word change, redistribution of wealth, anything about the climate, that's all propaganda. Propaganda is to stir the pot, get you upset emotionally, create fear. We are a republic. We are not a democracy. This country is run by laws. We're not a democracy. Then you have transfer. Transfer is a service by which the propagandist seeks to transfer unto him or his cause to esteem and respect we have for someone else. Celebrity endorsements, anyone. It's a way to bask in someone's reflected glory, like verging in social psychology parlance, to have another's legitimacy confer legitimacy onto the propagandist. Now, let me give you an example. Most of us respect and revere our church and our nation. If the propagandist succeeds in getting church or nation to approve a campaign in behalf of some program, He thereby transfers its authority, sanction, and prestige to that program. Thus, we may accept something which otherwise we might reject. And a good propagandist knows how to get one to change their position. So if you're going to stand on something, have facts behind it. Challenge the propagandist. And when you challenge the propagandist, what are they going to do? They're going to react emotionally. They're going to use ad hominem attacks too. They're going to try to break you down. And when they can't break you down, they lose the power. You remember that. Number of individuals, when you're afraid to challenge the propaganda always wins. But when you question the propaganda, you make them think, you know it's coming. You're going to have the immaturity, again, the name calling, the emotion. This is where you get, if something doesn't work someone's way, you're racist, you're sexist. Those are words to trigger the opposite, to get the opposite to comply. See, sometimes the shaming tactics can make the opposite lose their power. Don't let that happen. And the minute you let that happen, you lose. You always want to get the propagandists shaking in their boots, because a lot of what they're telling you is all lies. Look at fake news. This is why nobody watches it. Something else you must understand about propaganda. Testimonials. Now, this technique is used frequently in marketing and advertising. Propagandists will use testimonials to legitimize an idea or position. This technique makes use of the fact that we are more easily attached to specific personal narratives than to general facts and dry statistics. The personal narrative, after all, is the format by which we experience ourselves. Anne Frank is more accessible and comprehensible than 6 million, and thus carries more emotional resonance. Again, Anne Frank is more accessible and comprehensible than 6 million, and thus carries more emotional resonance. Plain folks. Now, this technique takes advantage of the human ability and desire to identify with like others. This is a device used by politicians, labor leaders, businessmen, and even by ministers and educators to win our confidence by appearing to be people like ourselves. Businessmen often are plain folks with the factory hands. Presidential candidates who eat at McDonald's, kiss babies, visit Iowa, or wear a baseball cap are not plain folks. They are merely using the plain folks technique. And let me give you another example of that. When Al Gore was speaking in 2000, when he was running against George Bush, he spoke in Baltimore. He spoke in front of a lot of black people. And what did he do? He tried to sound like a black pastor. Look at Hillary Clinton. She went down south. I believe it was Alabama when she was running for president. And we already know what kind of person she is. Well, she tried to act like she was a Southerner with the Southern accent. Something else Hillary Clinton did. She went on the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, pulled out a bottle of hot sauce. He asked her, "What do you need hot sauce for?" She said she liked hot sauce. No, the real answer is she thought all black people used hot sauce on some fried chicken. Look at Joe Biden. He said, well, if you don't know whether to vote for me or vote for Trump, you ain't black. Or he also said black people don't know how to use the internet. See, he used those words to trigger black people, but the funny thing about it, he went back and got plenty of the black votes. So his rhetoric, his propaganda worked because he was a Democrat, and most blacks vote Democrat, and he knew it. The propaganda worked. Yeah, blacks might get outraged about it, but they supported him anyway because he was a Democrat. Then we have card stacking. Card stacking is what we may use these days called hyping. It's full court PR. PR is a press release. That's what PR is. Now, the propagandist with this PR, or it's public. Um, PR has a lot of things. Press release, it's publicity. That's what PR is. So basically, the propagandists with PR, they employ all the arts of deception to win our support for himself, his group, nation, race, policy, practice, belief, or ideal. He stacks the cards against the truth. He uses underemphasis and overemphasis to dodge issues and evade facts. He resorts to lies, censorship, and distortion. These are what politicians and lawyers do. He omits facts. He offers false testimony. He creates a smokescreen of clamor by raising a new issue when he wants an embarrassing matter forgotten. He draws a red herring across the trail to confuse and divert those in quest of facts, and he does not want to be revealed. He makes the unreal appearance seem real and the real appear unreal. He lets half truth masquerade as truth. And it should be her in there because you have another number of females who do the same thing. In fact, you want to know some big propaganda? You look on Kendra G's show. Those women are full of propaganda. They're delusional. And they think of themselves as being value when their situation, they might have value, but their situation devalues them, like having a bad attitude, having kids out of wedlock, uh, expecting a man to make all this money, be a certain height. There's nothing wrong with standards, but are your standards realistic? Now, what does this have to do with standards? Well, because a number of individuals make demands that they can't keep. This is what happens on the Kendra G show. That is the biggest form of propaganda, and propaganda can also lead to delusion. This is why I did this topic, because it all goes back to psychology. Then we have something called bandwagon. Now, this is in essence an appeal to our tribal impulse, which is our deepest. So, when it comes to human beings, we're basically herd animals. We survive and thrive best in stable, well organized groups. We derive much of our identity and strength from our affiliations. We also want to belong and are terrified of social rejection and isolation. Thus, we are deeply conformist by design and are strongly susceptible to normative pressures. Nonconformists, by and large, do not opt out of the group to go at it alone. They merely switch affiliations from one group to another. That's why you are more likely to like something on Facebook if it already has many likes. More likely to have sex if you think all of your peers are doing it. More likely to vote if you believe all your neighbors have voted. Group affiliation at once enlarges our sense of self and overrides our sense of self. Basically, inside a large group, we can turn off our individual moral compass and shed the burdens of individual responsibility and identity, becoming, in effect, invisible with that free. Again, bandwagon. We all jump on the bandwagon. I'll give you an example. Sports teams. Most of the people want to jump on the team that's winning. If their team that is losing, oh, they'll vote for their team if it wins. They don't vote for their team if it loses, but they'll always vote for the winner. They're bandwagon. They're not individual thinkers. Most individuals want to be part of the clique. This is what you see in the workforce. Be part of a clique to be accepted. But the weakness about that is You don't challenge the affiliation of that group. What's this group about? You have to be an individual. You have to challenge sometimes the status quo because remember, you may feel affiliated. I'm saying feel affiliated, but you're an individual. So basically, what I'm going to say is to mobilize large groups, propagandists often appeal to already existing groups and coherent identities. So the propagandist directs his appeal to groups held together already by common ties, ties of nationality, religion, race, sex, location, with the aid of all the other propaganda devices. So all of the artifice of flattery are used to harness the fears and hatreds, prejudices and biases, convictions and ideals common to a group. Thus is emotion, thus is emotion made to push and pull us as members of a group onto a bandwagon. Now, by 1941, the IPA had ceased activities, yet its animating concerns and the principles it outlined are as urgent and relevant today as they were then. Once you know the techniques and you see that their use is persuasive and that it's not limited to one side or the other in the political arena, you will understand propaganda. Again, but you have to question it. Hence, the biggest underlying problem with propaganda is not who is using it, but the extent to which it's used to the diminishment or exclusion of reason, science, fact, and truth. That is to say, if our camp wins by using propaganda, it will be no victory at all because it means the people are gullible and vulnerable to the next skilled propagandist who may well come from the other side. So only people educated about the process of propaganda adamantly can adamantly not allow it to override the processes of science, and they will be truly civilized, liberated, and safe. Now, again, I went to college, so in some of the college classes that I had, I often look to dramatize this point about value of reason, evidence, and science. So I would ask professors to imagine that one of their peers is found murdered in their office. Eventually, everyone is going to be emotionally distraught about the murder, which is good because it motivates an investigation. Now, a suspect is immediately located. Let's call him suspect A. He is widely loathed rival of the deceased. So everyone on campus believes he's the killer. They expect him to have been the killer. They even hope he's the one. So he be removed from campus. Alas, as the detectives begin to collect actual evidence, the preponderance of it points clearly to suspect B, a well-liked friend of the deceased who should go to prison. So if I ask anybody on campus, is it suspect A, the one we all believe, expected, and hope would be the killer, or suspect B, who is the killer by all the evidence? And in the end, I think we would live in a society where suspect B ends up in prison. So basically, you see this in our political system and justice system. We can expect that advocates for differing sides will use and be subjected to emotional manipulation to predetermined ends. But if it's all there is, if the system either lacks or disavows a mechanism to obtain the evidence, analyze it rationally, and disseminate it clearly, disseminate means to spread out, then before long, we will have neither justice nor politics to speak of. Now, again, propaganda is very bad. This is why you must question what you see in the media, question some of the commercials. It's funny with some of these commercials out here, and I've never seen it before. Look at some of these. I've seen a commercial with two guys on there kissing each other on the lips, and it was a medicine commercial. Now, why did they put that on? They didn't put that on just to put that on. They put that on to show you that what they're doing is normal to what a man and a woman do. Now, I don't see too many commercials anymore where men and women are kissing unless it's a K Jewelers commercial. But I'm seeing a rash of guys kissing, especially when it comes to taking medicines that involve lowering HIV. You also look at some of the news outlets, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox, they all have their own propaganda. In fact, propaganda also propagates biasness. So you have individuals who are the same, but they're on opposite sides of the coin. Unless you question what's being said and what's being done, you're going to fall into a trap. And what propaganda does, it's basically there to basically have the sheep mentality. You know what happens to sheep? One goes into the slaughterhouse, they all follow. They don't come out, but they're on plates like mine, and I'm sucking the bones dry. That's because the sheep didn't think. When you see somebody go, if you're a sheep, you see one go into the slaughterhouse and it doesn't come out, you should question that as a sheep. And a lot of people are sheeps. That's right. A lot of people are sheep. They're not very smart. They don't use common sense. And you even have a number of your educated people who think because they have a degree, they're educated. No, you're not educated unless you apply what you learn in school to the real world. Now on Kendra G, I see a number of ladies on there. They're obsessed with making six figures, and they think they can get a man, make six figures, have kids, and travel. That's all. That's all baloney. That's propaganda. Now, anybody in his right mind or her right mind wouldn't believe that. However, because Kendra G on her show, it's mostly women who call in who are delusional, and a number of women are just like these women who call into that show. They think like that, they believe it without reasoning, and they think their value is much higher than it really is. And in this country, the reasons why we have all the problems is most people believe the lies. Let me give you an example. You have a sister, and this actually happened. And shout out to again, Brother Nate. He brought this up in the video. Well, baby daddy must have said something to the sister. So the sister went and called both of her brothers. This actually happened. Called both of her brothers to come down, do something to the baby daddy. Well, the brothers tried to bring that smoke. And guess what? They got smoked. So the mother of those children started out the day with 3 kids and went home with 1. So she had to bury 2 of her children because they believed what her sister said, what their sister said. Folks, I don't care if it's family, I don't care if it's the workplace, propaganda is everywhere. It's a cancer. And you have to be an individual about it. You can't fall into a group. You have to be able to separate from the group. You're going to church. One of the reasons why I don't go to church. A lot of propaganda comes out of churches. See, if you know what the main agenda is, you're never going to fall prey to the propaganda. But again, propaganda plays with your mind, plays with your emotions. It sounds good. Sounds good because you have people that don't question it. Again, it comes from social media. You have individuals who are on social media and they think they're stars. They lie to themselves. You have news outlets putting out misinformation, disinformation. You have individuals that don't want to see the statistics or hear the facts because the truth doesn't make them feel good. So they'd rather live the lie. Again, when you deal with propaganda, you're dealing with mass manipulation. Propaganda that comes from the person's mouth who's speaking it may have a soothing voice. But here's what you need to do. You need to listen to the message, question the message, question the method that they're using to present this propaganda. Make them back that propaganda up with something. That's what you do. Well, most people can't back that propaganda up with something. Why? Because they don't have anything. Their lips are always moving. And when their lips move, something false is going to come out. This is why I say debates. Okay. In politics, you can debate one another, but there's one thing I've never seen a politician do. Politician never shows any numbers. Okay. Prove to me that what you're saying is going to work. And do the math right there. And sometimes, even if you use statistics, you can come up with statistics that happened 20, 30 years ago and use it as fact. It's not fact. Make them use something concurrent. Make sure that a statistic is trending. This is what you must understand about propaganda. Now, again, propaganda is all engulfed in lies. This is where you get the half truths. You look at professors, they have agendas. And their agenda is to create social justice warriors so they can raise havoc on the rest of us. But if you're a student and you're worried about your grade, sometimes you got to get that professor in the office. And if you go to blows and you get suspended from school, go to blows. I'm not telling you to do that, but you're paying your money to go to school. You're not to have any professor disrespect you by lowering your grade because you don't believe their propaganda. I know I had to challenge one back at the University of Maryland. I remember that. And we were going to go to blows because I was paying my money and I wasn't believing that BS that they were talking. College is another place that sets you up to fail if you have propagandist professors. Also look at some of the books that are written by a number of people. See, just because you read something and you use it as a source, well, where do they get that information from? That's what you got to understand. See, a lot of things that go on, PR, which is public relations, it's a big market for public relations. Public relations is marketing. Something about marketing. Selling something. Could also have propaganda in it as well. And let me tell you some of the biggest propaganda that you see. Look at your commercials that you see, food commercials. Some of these burgers look bigger than what they are. I'll give you an example. Arby's. They had that looked like a pulled pork. Wasn't a pulled pork, it was a rib sandwich with fried onions on top of it. Well, it looked bigger than it really is. You look at some of your apartments or houses. They can use that propaganda to manipulate your eyes. Make things look bigger than what they are till you actually go see it live. See, propaganda just doesn't happen in the news, just doesn't happen in school, just doesn't happen on social media or religion or on your job or in government. It happens everywhere. Because what people were doing is they're trying to use manipulation to get ahead of you. Now, you have to understand that we live in a society, there are a number of jealous people. And when you have jealous people in front of you or next to you, they're going to use any tactic to try to knock you down because they feel unhappy about where they are in life. That's why you have to be careful with who you hang out with or associate with, because everybody that you're around is not your friend. In fact, that person that is supposed to be your right hand man and your right hand girl, they might be there just to try to get information about you to take you out. Because as Ringo put it out, and shout out to him, there's a lot of competitive jealousy out here. We already knew that, but it is, especially within Black folk. This is why we don't own anything. We will never own anything. Many of us will never have a Fortune 500 company because we don't work with each other, and we never will work with each other. And we have to stop trying to come to a kumbaya point. With Black people, many of us don't like each other because of the jealousy and the hate. Why? We blame it on white folk, but many of us have always been jealous of each other because some of us are still stuck on a plantation and some of us are getting off the plantation. This is why you hear all that BS about passport bros. Now, we already know that people who are getting passports and traveling, the real deal is they got the money. Most of these other brothers aren't going to travel. They don't have the money. And again, on Kendra G, she has many women on her show that say they love traveling. They might love it, but have they actually done it? See, you can make yourself to be anything you want on a YouTube video or on television or on the radio or in church or on your job. But just like I heard in Full Metal Jacket, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Most people can't walk the walk. And that's propaganda as well. Because a number of individuals overpraise themselves. You know, just saw a Kendra G video tonight where a woman said she made $200,000 a year. And by the way, ladies, we're not intimidated by how much you make. That's bullshit too. I don't know. That word is still going on. We're intimidated. You might not even make $200,000 a year. And if you do, are you making a net of $200,000 and then you're constantly traveling? Well, if you're constantly traveling, remember, you still got to pay for your house. You still got to pay for your car. You still got to pay for your electricity. You even have to pay for your expenses while you're at the hotel or getting hotels. Then you have to worry about taxes. How much retirement is coming out of your check? And we know a number of women, they're not investing in anything. I'm not going by race either. A number of Black, white, not American women, because the system is designed to give them an upper hand, because it's many of the women who are using the government for their lifestyle, especially as they get older. I don't see a lot of men on Medicare and Medicaid, although there are some, but most of the women are using all the resources. Now they'll tell you, oh, I got a college education. Yeah, but how much debt do you have with that college education? All propaganda. And when you believe that propaganda and you fall for the lies, you're going to fall victim to being a failure. So in the end, I'm just going to sum it up with this. When it comes to propaganda, question everything. Don't leave any stone unturned. Have a number of people giving you propaganda. There's this old adage, but there was one thing that was forgotten from this old adage. Black people made this up. Say what you mean what you say. There's something they forgot though. And I'm going to interject with what they didn't mention. Say what you mean, follow it with action, then you mean what you say. Why? Because your action backs up everything. I don't care about anybody sounding good. You can sound good on the radio. You can sound good on television. But are you living it? Many people aren't. Because in America, a number of individuals reject the truth, but follow the lie. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some educational content, check out the QCIS channel. On that channel, I'll give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. And if you can't find me on YouTube, you can always check me out on Twitter. Yes, once I finish recording my videos from the QCIS channel and the 401 Talk Zone radio show, not only upload them to YouTube, but I also upload them to Twitter. And for the QCIS channel, since it's an educational channel, I take it one step further. You can find that on my LinkedIn page. And again, once school's out, I'll go back to doing some live streams, but I only want 3 to 4 people on a panel. And if you're going to support it, because I don't mind doing pre-recorded content. I love doing pre-recorded content because I can say what I want to say and get out of here with no problem at all. But I want to treat you to having a good, lively panel. So starting next week, I'll bring the live streams back. It's just the past 3 weeks, I've been involved with school. My education is more important than doing YouTube. I have a regular job, so I'm not up here every day. But before I close, I want to end up on a good note. With this, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. Wish you all have a wonderful and gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.